What happens when a single mother shows up at her ex's wedding with the child he abandoned? This heart-wrenching story will leave you speechless. In this emotional roller coaster, Sophie makes the ultimate decision to reveal the truth that Lucas has been hiding from his bride-to-be. Watch as a perfect wedding day transforms into a life-changing moment that no one saw coming. Asterisk. Let's see how a story begun no one ever imagined. Asterisk. Sophie's hands trembled as she stared at the wedding invitation, its elegant script mocking her from the kitchen counter. It's Emily Rodriguez and Lucas Chen. Today, 2 hours from now. The coffee had gone cold in her mug, but she couldn't bring herself to move. Outside her cramped apartment window, Chicago's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun, indifferent to the storm brewing in her chest. 6-year-old Danny sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building towers with blocks that kept tumbling down just like everything else in their lives. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Danny's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Sophie wiped her cheeks, not realizing the tears had started. "I'm not crying, baby. Just thinking." But she was lying, and they both knew it. Danny had inherited Lucas's ability to see right through deception, those same dark eyes that could strip away pretense with a single glance, the eyes that had once made her feel like the only woman in the world. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, forwarded through a chain of mutual friends who thought it was sweet that Lucas was finally settling down. Sweet. The word tasted bitter. They had no idea that Lucas had already settled down once, with her in a tiny apartment much like this one, where they'd planned a future that shattered the night she told him about Danny. "I can't do this, Sophie. I'm not ready to be a father. We're too young. This will ruin everything." Those words still echoed in her mind, even now. Lucas had walked out that night, leaving her with nothing but a pregnancy test and a broken heart. She'd been 22, working double shifts at a diner, too proud to chase after a man who'd made his choice so clear. Now he was marrying someone else, someone who probably didn't know she existed. Sophie picked up her phone for the 100th time. Lucas's number still saved under L, because changing it felt like admitting defeat. Her thumb hovered over the call button. What would she even say? That she'd spent 6 years raising their son alone while he built a life with someone else? That Danny asked about his daddy every night before bed, but sometimes she still woke? Up reaching for Lucas across an empty mattress, the invitation crinkled in her other hand. St. Catherine's Cathedral. The same church where her grandmother had been married, where Sophie used to light candles and pray for things that never came. True. Danny's tower crashed again, blocks scattering across the hardwood floor. He looked up at her with those heartbreaking eyes. "Mommy, when will Daddy come home?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She'd told Danny that his father lived far away, that he loved him, but couldn't visit. Another lie in a collection of lies she'd built to protect them both. But protection felt less important now than truth. Sophie knelt beside her son, gathering him into her arms. He smelled like strawberry shampoo and the chocolate chip pancakes they'd shared for breakfast. Her whole world condensed into this small person who deserved more than half-truths and absent fathers. "Danny, what if I told you we might see Daddy today?" His face lit up with pure joy, and Sophie's heart cracked a little more. She was about to change everything, for better or worse. The careful life she'd built, the walls she'd constructed around her heart, the safety of anonymity, all of it would crumble the moment she walked into that cathedral. But as she looked at her son's hopeful expression, Sophie realized she was tired of living in the shadows of Lucas's choices. Danny deserved to know his father. Lucas deserved to know what his fear had cost them all. She stood up, decision crystallizing like ice in her veins. "Get dressed, baby. We're going to a wedding." The invitation fluttered to the floor as she reached for her coat, and for the first time in 6 years, Sophie felt the terrifying thrill of taking control of her own story. The cathedral doors felt heavier than they should have as Sophie pushed them open, Danny's small hand gripping hers with nervous excitement. The ceremony had already begun. Through the gap, she could see Lucas standing at the altar in a charcoal gray suit, his shoulders rigid with the same tension she remembered from their college presentations. He looked older, more polished, but still heartbreakingly familiar. Her chest tightened as memories flooded back. Late nights studying together in the library, his laugh echoing through their shared apartment. The way he used to trace patterns on her skin while they planned their future. "Is that him?" Danny whispered, pressing closer to her leg. Sophie's throat closed. "Yes, sweetheart, that's your daddy." The bride was stunning, all flowing silk and delicate beauty, everything Sophie had never been. Emily moved with grace down the aisle while guests sighed with appreciation. Sophie watched Lucas's face transform as his bride approached, saw the love there, real and present and cutting. This was a mistake. She should leave. Take Danny home and pretend this day never happened, but her son's hand in hers anchored her, reminded her why she'd come. Not for herself, not for revenge or closure, but for the little boy who deserved to know where he came from. The officiant's voice carried clearly through the cathedral, each word like a countdown to the moment that would change everything. Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs as the traditional words approached, the ones that would seal Lucas's fate if she stayed silent. "If anyone knows a reason these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Sophie felt every eye in the cathedral, though none were actually looking at her. This was it, the moment she'd rehearsed in her mind during the drive here. The words that would shatter the careful facade Lucas had built. But looking at Emily's radiant face, at the hope and love shining there, Sophie hesitated. This woman was innocent. She didn't deserve to have her wedding day destroyed by the ghosts of Lucas's past. Then Danny tugged on her dress. "Mommy, why? Isn't Daddy looking at us?" The question decided everything. Sophie's heels clicked against marble as she stepped into the aisle. Each step an irrevocable choice. Conversations died. Heads turned. The string quartet faltered, their melody dissolving into confusion. Lucas's face went white when he saw her, then his gaze dropped to Danny, and Sophie watched recognition dawn like a physical blow. His lips parted, but no sound came. Emily followed Lucas's stare, her smile fading as she took in the woman and child now standing in the middle of her wedding. "I'm sorry," Sophie said, her voice carrying further than she'd intended. The cathedral's acoustics turned her words into an announcement. "But there's something the bride needs to know." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Emily's bouquet trembled in her hands. "Sophie." Lucas's voice cracked on her name. "What are you doing here? What I should have done 6 years ago." Sophie's composure held, even as her heart shattered. "Emily, Lucas has a son. This is Danny. Your fiancé is his father." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally devastating understanding. Her gaze moved between Lucas and the little boy who shared his features, his expressions, his stubborn jawline. "Lucas." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "Is this true?" Lucas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The man who'd once talked their way out of every college scrape, who'd charmed professors and convinced Sophie to drop everything and move across the country with him, had no words. Danny broke the silence. "Are you my new mommy?" The innocent question hit the cathedral like a physical force. Emily's bouquet fell to the floor, white roses scattering across stone. Her father, a stern man in a navy suit, moved protectively to her side. "This is outrageous," he declared. "Security should remove these people immediately." But Emily raised a hand, stopping him. Her eyes never left Lucas's face. 6 years? She asked, each word deliberate and sharp. "You've had a son for 6 years and never told me." Lucas finally found his voice, broken and desperate. "Emily, please, let me explain. It's complicated. I was young and scared, and I made mistakes. But that doesn't change how I feel about you." "Mistakes?" Sophie's control finally cracked. "Our son isn't a mistake, Lucas. He's a beautiful little boy who asks about his father every single day. He's brilliant and kind and everything good about you. And you abandoned him because you were scared." The words hit their target. Lucas flinched as if struck, his face crumpling with shame and recognition. Around them, wedding guests sat frozen, witnesses to a tragedy playing out in real time. Emily stood perfectly still for a long moment, her wedding dress pooling around her like spilled moonlight. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but Sophie could see the fractures forming. I need to know everything. Right now. In front of everyone. Lucas's world was ending, and Sophie realized hers was just beginning. Lucas's confessions spilled out in broken fragments, each revelation cutting deeper than the last. He told Emily about the pregnancy, about his panic, about the checks he'd started sending to Sophie's old address, only to have them returned unopened. He spoke of sleepless nights wondering about his child, the private investigator he'd hired 2 years ago, the photographs he'd seen of Danny taking his first steps, starting school, growing up without him. I was going to tell you after. The honeymoon? Lucas finished, his voice hollow. I had it all planned out. How we'd bring him into our lives slowly, how we'd make it work. Emily's laugh was sharp and bitter. After the honeymoon? You were going to spring a child on me after we were legally bound? The cathedral had become a fishbowl, guests craning their necks to catch every word. Someone's phone camera flashed, and Sophie instinctively moved to shield Danny from the lens. The little boy had gone quiet, sensing the tension even if he couldn't understand its source. Emily's maid of honor, a striking woman with auburn hair, finally broke protocol and approached the altar. Maybe we should take this somewhere. Private. But Emily shook her head, her composure fracturing. No, Sarah, everyone here was invited to witness our union. They can witness its destruction too. She turned to Sophie, her voice gaining strength. Why now? Why today? Sophie had prepared for this question, but standing here in the cathedral's golden light, her carefully rehearsed answer felt inadequate. Because I'm tired of pretending he doesn't exist. Because Danny asks about his father every night, and I'm tired of lying to him. Because you deserve to know who you're marrying. And what about what I deserved 6 years ago? The words erupted from Emily with surprising venom. Did I deserve to fall in love with a man who was already a father? Did I deserve to plan A? Life with someone who was keeping the most important secret possible. Lucas stepped forward, desperate. Emily, please. My past doesn't change what we have. We can work through this. We can be a family, all of us. Emily's eyes flashed. A family? Lucas, I've spent 2 years planning our future. I've turned down job offers in other cities. I've rearranged my entire life around a man who was lying. To me, every single day. The truth of it hung in the air like incense, thick and choking. Sophie watched Emily's pain and felt an unexpected kinship with this woman she'd come to destroy. They'd both been betrayed by the same man, just in different ways. Danny tugged on Sophie's dress again. Mommy, why is everyone sad? Did I make them sad? The question broke something in Lucas. He dropped to one knee, finally meeting his son's eyes. No, buddy, you didn't make anyone sad. You're perfect. For a moment, father and son simply looked at each other, 6 years of absence compressed into a single gaze. Danny's face lit up with recognition, some genetic memory awakening. Lord, you look like me, Danny said with 6-year-old directness. You look like me too, Lucas whispered, his voice thick. Emily watched this reunion with something close to horror. This is insane. I can't be standing here watching my fiancé meet his secret child at our wedding. This isn't happening, but it was happening, and Sophie could see the exact moment. Emily's world reorganized itself around this new reality. The bride's shoulders straightened, her chin lifted, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a cold clarity that made Sophie's skin prickle. I need to know everything, Lucas. Every detail. Every lie. Every moment you chose to deceive me while I planned our life together. Emily, not here. Please. Lucas's composure was completely gone now, desperation making his voice ragged. Here, Emily said firmly. Now, in front of everyone who came to celebrate our love story. Let them hear the real version. The church had gone silent, except for the whisper of fabric as guests shifted in their seats. Sophie realized she'd stepped into something bigger than she'd intended. This wasn't just about Danny anymore. This was about Emily's need to understand how thoroughly she'd been betrayed. Lucas looked between the two women who held his fate in their hands, and Sophie saw him recognize what she'd known from the moment she decided to come. There was no way forward that didn't destroy someone. Emily's father approached the altar, his face grim. The spectacle needs to end. Emily, we're leaving. But Emily didn't move. Her gaze fixed on Sophie with laser intensity. Tell me about him. Tell me about their relationship. Tell me everything Lucas won't. Sophie felt the weight of choice. She could be merciful. Tell Emily just enough to satisfy her need for truth without completely demolishing the woman's world. Or she could tell her everything, including the parts that would make it impossible for Emily to ever look at Lucas. The same way again, looking at Danny's innocent face, then at Emily's desperate need for honesty. Sophie made her choice. We lived together for 3 years. He said he loved me. He said we'd get married after graduation. The night I told him I was pregnant, he said I was trying to trap him. He left that same night, and I never saw him again until today. Emily's face went gray. 3 years. 3 years, Sophie confirmed. He promised me forever, Emily, just like he promised you. Emily's transformation was swift and terrifying. The gentlewoman who'd walked down the aisle dissolved, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. She stepped closer to Lucas, her wedding dress rustling like armor. 3 years of promises, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. Tell me, Lucas, what were you promising her while you were promising me forever? Lucas opened his mouth, but Emily cut him off with a raised hand. Don't. I can see it in your face. You loved her? Maybe you still do? She turned to Sophie, studying her with new eyes. You're beautiful. Different from me, but beautiful. I can see why he'd choose you first. Emily, please, Lucas begged. It's not like that, isn't it? Emily's laugh was sharp as glass. Let me guess the timeline. You met Sophie in college? You lived together, played house, made promises? Then she got pregnant, and suddenly commitment became real instead of theoretical.
So you ran.
Sophie watched Emily piece together the story, with painful accuracy. And then, Emily continued, after you'd built a new life, after you'd convinced yourself you were a different person, you met me, a safe, predictable me. The kind of woman who wouldn't surprise you with unexpected consequences. That's not fair, Lucas said, but his protest sounded hollow even to himself. Emily's composure cracked. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave up my residency program to move here with you. I turned down a position at Johns Hopkins because you said Chicago was our future. I've spent 2 years becoming the woman you said you wanted to marry, and now I find out you already had the woman you actually loved. Had, Sophie said quietly. Past tense. Both Emily and Lucas turned to her, startled. I said had, Sophie repeated, lifting her chin. Lucas made his choice 6 years ago. I'm not here to get him back. I'm here because my son deserves better than a father who pretends he doesn't exist. Our son, Lucas corrected, taking a step toward Danny. Sophie's eyes flashed. No, he became my son the night you walked away. Biology doesn't make you a father, Lucas. Showing up does. Danny, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Are you getting married today? He asked Emily, his 6-year-old directness. Cutting through the adult complexities, Emily knelt down to his eye level, her wedding dress pooling around her. Up close, Sophie could see the careful makeup beginning to smudge, the cracks in her perfect facade. I don't know, sweetheart, I thought I was, but sometimes plans change. My mommy says plans change when people lie, Danny said matter-of-factly. Did somebody lie? The innocent question hung in the air like an accusation. Emily's eyes met Sophie's over Danny's head, and in that moment, Sophie saw something unexpected. Not hatred, not even anger, but a strange kind of understanding. Yes, Emily said softly, somebody lied. Lucas finally found his voice. I never lied about loving you, Emily. Everything between us is real. Emily stood slowly, her wedding dress seeming to weigh her down. Is it, or am I just the safe choice you made after the real choice became too complicated? The question hit its mark. Lucas's face crumpled, and Sophie realized Emily had identified the truth that even Sophie hadn't fully grasped. She hadn't been Lucas's great love lost to circumstance. She'd been his great love abandoned for convenience. "Emily," Lucas whispered, "please don't do this. We can work through anything." But Emily was already moving, her hands reaching behind, her neck to unclasp the delicate necklace Lucas had given her that morning. The diamond pendant caught the light as it fell to the cathedral floor with a tiny chime. 6 years, she said, her voice growing stronger. "You've had 6 years to figure out how to be a father, how to deal with your past, how to be honest. Instead, you chose to build a life on lies." She pulled off her engagement ring, the massive diamond that had taken Lucas months to afford, and held it out to him. When he didn't take it, she set it carefully on the altar beside the wedding program. "Emily, wait." Sophie stepped forward, surprising herself. "This doesn't have to end your relationship. People work through worse things." Emily turned to her, and Sophie saw tears finally beginning to fall. "Can they? Could you forgive someone who spent 3 years promising you everything, then disappeared the moment things got difficult? Could you marry someone knowing they'd run when life got complicated?" The question hung between them, unanswerable because they both knew the truth. "I thought I knew who I was marrying," Emily continued. "I thought he was honest, dependable, someone who would stand by me no matter what. But he's not that man." "Is he?" Sophie looked at Lucas, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the idealized memory she'd carried for 6 years, not the villain she'd painted him as during her hardest moments, but the flawed, frightened man he actually was. "No," she said quietly. "He's not." Emily nodded as if Sophie had confirmed something she already knew. She turned to the gathered guests, her voice carrying with surprising strength. "Thank you all for coming today to witness what was supposed to be the beginning of our marriage. Instead, you've witnessed the end of our engagement. I'm sorry for wasting your time, but I'd rather discover the truth now than spend my life married to a lie." She gathered her skirts and walked toward the cathedral doors, her head held high despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. "Lucas, I hope you figure out how to be the father your son deserves. And I hope someday you learn the difference between love and convenience." The doors closed behind her with a final sound that echoed through the cathedral like a period at the end of a sentence. Lucas stood alone at the altar, surrounded by the wreckage of his carefully constructed life, while Sophie and Danny watched from the aisle, uncertain of what came next. 6 months later, Sophie stood in the playground watching Danny navigate the monkey bars with determined concentration. The autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves and the sound of children's laughter, normal things that felt precious. After the chaos of the wedding that had changed everything, Lucas appeared beside her, 2 coffee cups in his hands. He'd been doing this for weeks now. These careful visits that always began with coffee and ended with him reading Danny bedtime stories. Progress, Sophie supposed, though trust was a slower creature than forgiveness. "He's getting stronger," Lucas observed, offering her a cup. "He always was strong. You just weren't here to see it." The barb landed softly, without the venom it might have carried months ago. They were learning how to talk to each other again, how to navigate the space between love and hurt, between past and present. "Any word from Emily?" Sophie asked, surprising herself with the question. Lucas shook his head. "Her friend Sarah says she's doing well. Took that position at Johns Hopkins after all. Found an apartment in Baltimore, started fresh. Good for her." They watched Danny reach the end of the monkey bars and drop to the ground with a triumphant yell. He ran toward them, his face bright with achievement. "Dad, did you see? I made it all the way across." Dad. The word still sent visible shocks through Lucas every time Danny used it. 6 months of Saturday visits had built something fragile but real between them, a relationship that existed in the present rather than the past. "I saw, buddy. That was amazing." Danny beamed and ran back to the playground equipment, leaving his parents in the complicated quiet they'd learned to navigate. "Sophie," Lucas said, his voice careful. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I need to know. Do you think there's any chance for us? For our family?" Sophie had been expecting this question for weeks. She'd rehearsed her answer, thought through all the practical considerations, weighed the benefits of a traditional family against the risks of returning to someone who'd already broken her heart once. Lucas, 6 years ago, you had a choice between fear and love. It chose fear. It cost you everything that mattered, including Emily, who deserved better than being your safe choice. Lucas nodded, accepting the judgment. Sophie continued. Danny needs his father. Maybe after all this time apart, we're both different people than we were then. Maybe? Sophie looked at him, really looked, searching for signs of the man who'd once promised her forever. What she found was someone humbled by loss, softened by consequence, carrying scars that matched her own. Maybe, she agreed, but if we try. It's not going to be easy. I won't be Emily, grateful for whatever pieces of honesty you decide to give me. I know exactly what you're capable of, and I won't accept less than everything. Everything. Commitment, showing up even. When it's hard, especially when it's hard. Danny and I have built a good life without you. If you want to be part of it, you have to earn it every single day. Lucas set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. I know I destroyed what we had. I know I hurt you and abandoned. Danny and made choices that cost us all 6 years we can't get back. But I also know I've spent every day since regretting those choices. He paused, watching Danny climb toward the top of the playground structure with fearless determination. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise it will be easy. But I can promise I'll never run again. Not from you, not from him. Not from the hard parts of being a family. Sophie studied his face, looking for the tells she'd learned to recognize years ago. The way his left eye twitched when he was being less than honest. The way his hands fidgeted when he was hiding something. She saw none of those familiar signs, just raw sincerity and the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Okay, she said simply. Okay, we'll try. Slowly, carefully, with lots of talking and no promises about forever, because forever is what got us in trouble the first time. Lucas's smile was tentative but genuine. I can live with that. Danny called from the top of the playground. Mom, Dad, look how high I am. They both looked up at their son, silhouetted against the autumn sky, fearless and beautiful in theirs. For the first time in 6 years, Sophie allowed herself to imagine a future that included all three of them. It wouldn't be the fairy tale she'd once dreamed of, and it wouldn't erase the pain they'd all endured. But it might be something better than perfection. It might be real. As they walked home together, Danny chattering between them about playground, conquests, and weekend plans, Sophie thought about Emily somewhere in Baltimore. Building a new life based on hard-won truth rather than comfortable lies. There was something to be said for that kind of courage, for choosing the difficult path toward authenticity over the easy path toward security. Sophie had made her own choice today, not between love and safety, but between the past and the possibility of something rebuilt from honest pieces. As Danny slipped his small hand into hers, and Lucas fell into step beside them, she realized that sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the wreckage of what came before. Asterisk. Subscribe for more emotional stories that will make you cry, think, and believe in second chances. Like if this story touched your heart, comment your thoughts on Sophie's decision. Share with someone who loves powerful drama. The end.